Hello, everyone, and welcome back to yet another episode of Expert Insights Live. Uh, Before we move on or start the session, if people can just confirm that they can hear us, see us, that would be great. Just to ensure that we are not speaking on a blank screen and there are really people out there. If you could just drop a line, that would help us confirm that we're really live. Let's just wait a few seconds in case we don't hear from anyone, then yeah, we can just start. Oh, Yoon dropped out. Okay, I think people can see us for sure. Welcome back, Yoon.
Sorry about that.
People can see us because I've received the first comment #packed. Great. So, all right. So we have Nick and Yoon with us. Before we start, Nick, Yoon, do you all want to introduce yourself? Let's just go in order because Nick, you're right after me. Nick, do you want to start introducing yourself?
Yeah, sure. So Nick Birch, I'm based out of the Tampa Bay area. I've been doing data science for a long time. Started with academic research and engineering, which was over a decade ago. And then since then worked in a lot of different areas, from finance to data operations to work in the public sector. And increasingly ML has become a more and more important tool. And especially in recent years, generative AI as well. So I was excited to work on this book with you.
Thanks, Nick. And Yoon, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure thing. Hey everyone, my name is Yoon Huang. I wouldn't tell how many years I've been doing data science. I'll just tell you a funny story. I started working as a data scientist before data science was a term. So after a few years working for data science initiatives, I had to earn my way into earning a data science title from software engineer title. But yeah, been a journey building data science solutions mostly for fintech and marketing tech companies. Have probably built about 3,000 different models so far. Been definitely a journey working with Nick on this book on machine learning and generative AI for marketing, where we share a lot of our insights, personal experiences, building such models for marketing initiatives. Happy to share more of our thoughts today.
Thanks, Yoon. And don't go by Yoon's baby face. He's way older than he actually looks. So a couple of things before we start. If you feel like you want to ask any queries during the session, please feel free to do that in the chat, and Nick and Yoon will answer them for you. And also, there's a ticker going on at the bottom over here, which reads that there is a giveaway and 2 lucky winners will be picked at random. So comment #packed. There's already someone who has done that. Unso AIU has done that on YouTube. So yeah, please feel free to post that. We'll do one raffle towards the middle of the session and one towards the end. So don't be disheartened if you don't win the first one. All right. So Nick and you, let's get started. While we're waiting for people to ask their queries, I have quite a few of them. So how do you both see the role of generative AI evolving in the next 5 years within marketing? And what emerging trends should marketers be aware of?
Sure thing. I'll start off and definitely chime in, Nick. I feel like we're at the very beginning of Gen AI and especially its application to marketing initiatives. I think presumably for the next year or so or a couple of years, we'll see a lot of applications for marketing initiatives, like how to use Gen AI, get it generated for contents that marketers want to use or images that marketers want to use within their marketing campaigns. But as we kind of mature with the usability and applicability of Gen AI, I feel like there can be some of the potential downsides as well. As you would know, as marketers or professional data scientists in marketing space, marketing fatigueness is a true thing. And people being exposed to such contents generated by Gen AI can create more fatigueness. So one thing I wanted to make a note for marketers or data scientists using Gen AI for marketing for the next few years, definitely keep an eye out for marketing fatigueness. and definitely monitor how it affects your marketing campaigns. But more on the positive side, definitely it's going to be an assistance for creative tools for marketers and data scientists, and definitely the productivity levels are going to go up because, as you can imagine, creating marketing contents is it takes a lot of time, energy, and creative thoughts. And getting assistance from Gen AI models, I feel like it can really let marketers and data scientists focus on what matters the most. So for the next 5 years, I would say it'll be a lot of trial and errors. Some of the things that we'll see that we haven't really thought about, but after all, it'll be the key will be the human AI interactions and boost in productivity and creativity. I'm sure Nick, you'll have some comments to add.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything you mentioned. And I guess I'd start off by echoing your sentiment that we're really at the beginning of the journey. I think in the next 5 years, it really will have evolved in a lot of ways that are kind of beyond how we recognize it today, and probably become a pretty foundational element in delivering really hyper personalized customer experiences and content for marketing campaigns. So definitely there will need to be humans in the loop, especially for example, highly regulated industries like finance, healthcare, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But in some aspects, we are pretty close to having companies that can nearly automate all of the foundational parts of the customer experience, which is really exciting. So from product recommendations to even inventory management and adaptive customer service bots, going through most of the full cycle. So I think that's really exciting, and lots of stuff we can talk more about how that's being enabled. Things like multimodal Gen AI. You can see examples of that in lots of different sources, and things like multi-agent bots that can automate interactions, and lots of really cool stuff going on that I think will drive that.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks, Yuna. Yuna, I just wanted you to elaborate a little bit on the marketing fatigue bit that you mentioned. Can you just elaborate what marketing fatigue actually is for our audience, and what do you mean that we would reach that point, and how that happened?
Sure thing. I'll elaborate on that with an experience I personally had. Wasn't so pleasant. So we've created a marketing model that basically forecasts how likely our customers are going to open the emails. So we actually talk about it in our book as well. One of the chapters is about building these predictive models for different KPIs for marketing. But one thing we wanted to optimize for was when we send out these marketing emails, we wanted people to open it more. It'll be different by industries, but typically we'll see, single digits or maybe in like 10 to 20% open rates when you market through emails. When we first launched our predictive models that kind of rank order based on the likelihoods of people opening up the emails, it was very successful. For the first couple months, the returns were 2 to 3x. So for example, for one brand that I was helping out, building the marketing model for optimization for email opens, they were originally seeing about like 15%-ish open rates. For the first 2 to 3 months, their open rates were skyrocketed, like 30 to 40%, which is unheard of in marketing industry. But what we noticed is as the time progresses, the open rate kind of like went back to where it was before. So from 20 at the launch of our model, it went to like 30, 40%, and then slowly decades back to 20%, and eventually even lower than where it was before. And we were curious because it was like 12 years ago when we first observed it. And I was like, what is going on? Because it was working so well 3 months ago, but now all of a sudden it's going worse than where it was before. And when we did some research, it was creating the fatigueness within our audience, meaning they were exposed to our marketing emails a little too often. People that were ranked high so that we marketed to, they were exposed to our marketing contents a little too often, too many times, which kind of overloaded with unnecessary information or repeated information. That kind of made our customers churn, and stop opening up the emails, which eventually led to lower email open rates. And I've repeatedly seen this kind of paradigm times over times, and marketing fatigueness, as it's termed nowadays, is a true thing. So we can apply to the same concept to the Gen AI. When we start creating more contents with Gen AI models, there can be certain patterns that Gen AI models use repeatedly and can create unconscious fatigueness within our target customers. So definitely a thing to look out for when we start generating more contents with Gen AI models, especially when there are certain patterns that are recognizable. Hopefully that
Thanks,
answered
Jude.
your question.
Yeah, it does. I just wanted to inform people on LinkedIn that for some reason our studio platform is not picking up comments from LinkedIn, but I can see them on my phone.
Mm.
So yeah, in case you had any queries on LinkedIn, I'll read them out. I can just see a comment from Raj Arun saying that, hey guys, congrats on the book. So yeah, in case anyone else has any queries, please feel free to post them, whether it's on YouTube or LinkedIn. We'll ensure that we don't miss out on your queries. So yeah, while we are still waiting for the audience to ask their queries, I'll move on to mine, the list of queries that I have. Can you share an example where a company effectively integrated the techniques that you've discussed in the book to achieve significant results?
Nick, do you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I can speak to some kind of broader examples of name brand companies that are using the techniques that we illustrate in the book. I mean, some of the biggest name brands are definitely, Netflix and Amazon. They use ML and really increase their user engagement through hyper personalization. So, I mean, Netflix, they're able to analyze billions of data points of customer viewing history. They use neural networks. And as far as impact goes, I mean, there's a McKinsey report that shows they've increased their user engagement and conversion by over 10%, which is huge in the scale of Netflix, as far as the revenue that creates for them. And similarly with Amazon, except in the context of e-commerce, you see that with their product recommendations. And it's also something that we discussed pretty comprehensively in one of the chapters of our book as well, around personalized recommendation strategies. Those are two really big examples. There's some in the marketing realm that I could talk to as well, but I guess I'll pause. You want to add any comments?
Sure thing. Yeah, on top of what Nick mentioned in terms of product recommendations that Netflix, Amazon use, and many other brands use, there are literally endless amount of applications you can do. I think some of the good examples are like Stitch Fix, which is a personalized styling platform. It kind of like looks at your preferences and try to generate the styles that you may be interested in. I don't exactly know what kind of algorithms they use behind the scenes, but as part of our book, like Nick mentioned, we talk about like how collaborative filtering can be used for product recommendations, or in the case of Stitch Fix, the fashion recommendations. Also, aside from those recommendations, I briefly mentioned in during the previous question, but personalized marketing campaigns often use these predictive models. So whether you want to target people who are likely to open your emails, or who are likely to click on your emails, or who are likely to convert or even churn. And we also talk about those predictive models in our book. One of the chapters is primarily for building personalized marketing models using these machine learning techniques. But some of the brands, and especially retailers, use a lot of these targeted recommending or targeted rank ordering algorithms to optimize who to reach out to. I've worked with many brands that include like Tory Burch, Business Insider, who else? Like even those snowboarding equipment companies like Home Depot. They all use these kind of techniques to rank order and micro target the customers that are of the interest. And also even retailers, they can even use like time series forecasting to forecast when they're expecting a spike in sales and get ready for that, or get ready for massive marketing. You can think of like Black Fridays. You'll get a lot of emails from Amazon. You'll get a lot of emails from like Walmart, Target, and they use like time series forecasting to kind of like predict what's the prime time that customers are gonna look at your marketing content and come and convert into paying customers.
Yeah, and to your earlier comment too, Yoon, around avoiding user fatigue. I mean, there's some really great strategies that companies are also using to do exactly that. So you mentioned how you can do or micro targeting and hyper personalization. Like for example, I know Sephora uses a conversational AI chatbot that actually gives people tailored product recommendations, and it can take into account things like their skin type, their concerns, and their goals. And that also has been really powerful. I read a number that it was 76% higher conversion rates compared to a generic chatbot. So I think the whole concept of personalizing the experience, avoiding that marketing fatigue, and then techniques like few-shot learning, transfer learning, even going to RAG or retrieval augmented generation with your LLMs is really powerful, and also topics that we cover with examples in the book as well. So.
Yeah, actually, that reminded me of one thing that I should mention. When I was working at a marketing tech company called Sell-Through, what I built there is assisted subject line writing, similar to what Nick and I have been mentioning about creating content using Gen AI. You can also create a catchy subject line phrases. What matters the most, especially in email marketing, is you got to catch the customer's eyes first, so that they open your email, and then you can provoke them to click on the email contents, etc. But the catchy subject line phrase was the key. So what we built there at the marketing tech company called Sell-Through was assisted or augmented subject writing system, which essentially uses Gen AI to help marketers create subject lines that are going to result in higher open rates. So that can be another example.
Perfect. I think we've got some comments from some queries from Raj Arun. I'm just trying to divide them into 3 parts on LinkedIn so I can see them here. Hopefully it pops up. I don't know if it will, but hopefully it does. But in the meanwhile, we have another query from someone named Naim Tyson. Their name is not showing up here for some reason, but Naim wants to inquire that for personalized marketing models, how do you recommend dealing with the cold start problem?
I assume cold start problem meaning starting without any historical data set or lack of historical data set. There are a couple things I would recommend. One, you can kind of approach it as like a multi-arm bandit problem, where you will kind of hypothesize on certain models or certain algorithms first, and then run some experiments for a certain period of time. So, for example, maybe you have an algorithm A, B, C, D, and then you run it in parallel, kind of subdivide or route your traffic to A, B, C, D algorithms. And then across time, maybe like give it 2 weeks of trial or 4 weeks of trial. You'll then gather some information on how users interact with those proposed hypotheses or algorithms. And then after a certain period of testing, you can kind of decide, oh, this one works better. You can either choose one over the other and go from there, or you can even run more experiments until you feel comfortable building the actual predictive models. Also, another approach is kind of like looking at it as cohorts or similar segments. We also discuss about customer segmentations within our book in one of the chapters. When there's a lack of samples or when there's non-existence of samples, like cohort or grouping or segmenting customers together and build a little more aggregated version works decently well. So in this case of cold start problem or lack of historical data problem, I would suggest running a few experiments across specific time period of testing, or apply some segmentations or clustering, and then go about building these models for those targets. Nick, if you want to add anything.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely the way I'd go about it as well. If you have really limited data and you haven't run those experiments yet, tools like content-based filtering. So if you have very limited history about things that they've interacted with in the past, similar to you mentioned, you can look at what segment they're in, how others in their segment have made decisions, and then use that to inform your marketing strategy. And then again, when you're trying to go beyond that, so zero shot learning, which is having no examples about the specific, in this case, customer, but trying to market to them effectively, is making advances. But back to the point earlier, you will see marketing fatigue if we're all using the same zero shot learning technique with the same state of the art models. So again, it's really important to do things like retrieval augmented generation, a few shot learning as soon as you can. And you can really see some pretty remarkable results with just a few examples. So you take your general model, you see specifically what that user is doing that's different from maybe the norm, and you give it in as examples to the LLM, and it can create some pretty compelling content. So,
yeah, and I would like to add just one more thing, since we're already touching about the topic of zero-shot learning. One thing that's kind of more appealing nowadays is you can synthetically generate data in case of non-existence or lack of historical data set. We also discussed synthetic generation of data briefly in our book, but I've also personally used that synthetically generated data to kind of like warm start my AI ML models. You can use ChatGPT or any other generative AI models to generate synthetic data. Sometimes I even use, if it's numerical or if you can convert your data set into numerical representations, what I used quite frequently was I applied kernel density estimations to kind of like estimate the probability distribution and then synthetically generate some samples out of those perceived probability distribution, so that I can at least warm start my personalization models. So hopefully that helps addressing your cold start problem.
Thank you. So on LinkedIn, there was a query from, in fact, there are 3 or 4 queries from Raj Arun. Unfortunately, there is some problem with LinkedIn and StreamYard, and all the queries are not popping up. So what I've done, Raj, is I've just posted it from my YouTube because YouTube comments are showing up, and I'll read out the query for some reason. Yeah, okay. So this was a query from Raj Arun on LinkedIn. Ownership of AI generated content. Who owns the rights to content created by AI? This is the first of 4 queries.
Yeah,
Nick, do you want to take it?
I can try and I can try and at least jump in first. I mean, I think there's, first off, this is a complex and involving area, but I'd say there's at least 2 main aspects you should take into account. I mean, one is who actually trained the generative AI model, and is it openly available, or if you're paying for it, what are the terms of use? In most cases, these developers of the LLMs want everybody to use their models, so it's not a big concern, but in theory, there can be copyright issues there. And then going back to the actual content that's used to train those models, it's a little bit more out of your hands. There have been some high-profile cases of it being trained on information that was copyrighted and not suitable for their use in the LLMs, and that has some issues with those who train the model. But assuming it's all openly available, freely available, and it's not crossing any lines when it comes to the legality of the content being used, it's currently not a big concern, but that's largely because a lot of jurisdictions haven't explicitly tackled this issue. Like in the US copyright law, it's not explicitly addressed because AI is just, and this whole problem is so new. So it's definitely something that we need to be monitoring closely.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to highlight, what as part of the points that Nick raised, laws always lag behind the technologies that we develop. As technologists ourselves, we are excited to develop stuff rather than worrying about the legality of anything that we develop. And I think any laws or jurisdictions will lag behind the phase or the pace of technology developments. So I think it's really critical for all of us developers to have a good understanding of what's ethical and what's not ethical. I think we can kind of relate onto our common senses on were we ethical when we were building models, like Nick mentioned. There were some copyrighted items or some of the non-public information that were used by these generative AI when they were being trained. So I think it's key for all of us technologists or users to be aware of what went in when creating these Gen AI models. Also, the output from Gen AI models. Is there any breach of copyrights or any rights to the content? So it's kind of critical to do fact checking, critical to do some legal checks on the content that you will be publicly using. So that's just a couple points that I wanted to add on top of what Nick mentioned.
Okay, there are two more queries from him. Let's take another query and then we can do the raffle, the first one of the two. So the second query from Raj Arun is, again, this is not a query from me. This is from Raj on LinkedIn. I've just posted it on from YouTube. Fair use doctrine. How does fair use apply to generative AI? Can businesses claim fair use when using copyrighted materials for training purposes?
I'll briefly answer and Nick chime in. I think we kind of alluded to this question as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we got to be truthful to ourselves. Like, can someone claim copyrighted materials when that person is not an owner of that copyrighted material? I think the answer would probably very likely no. So I think it's crucial to have a good understanding what goes in when building Gen AI models. Yes, accidents can happen, but we should do our best to do those checks and make sure we don't breach any copyrights or any property ownerships of certain contents that go into training these models.
I think before we move on to Nick, the next question also alludes to the same thing. So I'll just post that in as well so we can answer both of it together. That if an AI generated work infringes on existing copyrights, who is liable? I think now I understand why Raj is inquiring so much about copyrights, because if AI infringes some copyrights, who ends up being liable? Is it the AI model? Is it the company who created the AI model? Or is it the people who created the model internally within an organization? So yeah, exactly. So yeah, I agree where he's coming from and where he's going to.
Yeah, I can see the flows of these
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the same question of, like if you're driving an autonomous vehicle and you get into an accident, whose fault is it? Like, is it you who was on the driver's seat but who was not actually driving, or is it the
Yeah.
software that was driving? Like maybe some of the OEMs that created these AI model that does autonomous driving. Is it their fault, or is it the manufacturer's fault? If you were driving Tesla, if you're driving like I don't know, Volkswagen, like is it the fault of manufacturer? So I think it's kind of like along the same line. Obviously, we don't really have a clear legal separations on who is liable for such. But yeah, it's not an easy topic to answer. My only take is all of us, again, me repeating, but should be ethical enough and should be responsible for creating Gen AI models that don't breach any legal rights to certain contents. Nick, if you want to
Sorry,
add
Nick.
anything.
Yeah, I'll let you add on more to it.
Yeah, no, I just reemphasize it is a gray area right now. I mean, we're not legal experts, and it's not, again, explicitly addressed in at least in U.S. law and in a lot of major countries. So it's really tricky to say. I mean, right now in the U.S., AI models aren't considered legal entities, so that at least the responsibility likely wouldn't lay there. But like you mentioned, the user and the developer could certainly take responsibility, and it can be a very messy gray area. But some of the case law has pointed to. I don't want to extrapolate too much because again I'm not a legal expert, but the cases that I mentioned earlier, like training AI models, um, which could be used for the public good, so it could fall under fair use to, for example, I think it was Getty Images sued Stability AI, a company back in 2023, for using their data without proper licensing rights, and that was a case that went to court. So that's one related example, but again, it's not clearly defined, so we have to see.
All right. Thanks, Nick Yoon. Let's just take a pause from all the questions, so at least you get time to have some water. And in the meanwhile, we can draw our first raffle. So yeah, let's just draw our first raffle. Uh, just a reminder for everyone else who's watching online, there's a ticker going on at the bottom which says that there are a couple of giveaway winners. So we're presenting the first raffle and it will be done live. So yeah, the raffle will just randomly pick up the name. Okay, there are 6 entries so far. Can you see the screen? You, Nick?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay,
Yep.
perfect. So let's pick some person up. Okay, congratulations, Savitri Baka. You're the first winner
Congratulations.
you're the first winner of the raffle, Savitri. I think you are connected with me on LinkedIn. Uh, just in case you are not, please add me up on LinkedIn and I'll ensure you get your ebook. But yes, please add me up on LinkedIn and I'll coordinate the rest with you. I'll just need your email address to get the ebook sent out to you. Uh, yes, there is Jeremy who's added his hashtag packed. Yes, please comment hashtag packed as Jeremy has done. So yeah, you can be a part of this last raffle. There is another one towards the end. So while we are moving ahead on the queries, I think Raj inquired another query. It's quite a long one, so I'll just read it out from LinkedIn. What are the ways and measures from your experience followed to ensure the generated content goes through guardrails before getting exposed to end users, or rather, the users themselves are being exposed to this influence? Sure, if I understand this. Do you understand
Yeah.
it? Okay,
Yep.
perfect.
Yep. Makes sense. Yeah. Just to start off, it's so there's no perfect guardrail. I'll start from there. Some of the measures I would always enforce is I do deep evaluations of the outputs from the Gen AI models. Whenever I see, even during the training time, one I'll go through measures of training, like rounds of testing and evaluations, where I'll make sure, one, is it outputting the fact? So the content within Gen AI models, whether I do some topic modeling, whether I do some summarizations of Gen AI outputs, or whether I do some scenario testing on Gen AI output, I make sure, like, is it spitting out the facts or is it truly hallucinating? Also, when it spits out the fact, is it a legitimate fact? You can kind of handpick some of the examples, create your own evaluation sets, and making sure your area of concern gets addressed during the evaluation time, and make sure it doesn't output the copyrighted materials or anything that may breach any legality of the contents. But I would kind of emphasize having that kind of monitoring and evaluation mechanisms, like multi-step evaluation mechanism, is the key to at least guardrail and ring fence unexpected behaviors. And once I have that chains of evaluations implemented, what I typically do is have a measure of the unexpected slippages. Things like like what's the chance of these breach of any legality happening with my models? At least have some measures on what's the expected behavior, what works well and what does not work well, and when it doesn't work well, what's the rate or percentage of that occurrence happening. I think that way we can at least expect how the models will behave and what's the expected impact of it not working as expected when that happens.
Yeah. And the thing I just add to that is that really the name of the game is risk mitigation. So if it is something high impact, if the model gets it wrong, you want to have more checks, potentially more humans in the loop, things like that before it goes out into the wild. Because like you mentioned, there's no one size fits all, tech that you can implement. It's very much an evolving and active area of research, and the biggest tech companies out there are still struggling with this. So there's not an easy solution. But like, for example, when I've done ML predictions for my work, you can also look at this is a little bit more challenging with LLMs, but with ML classification tasks, you can often look at the probability of the prediction, look at that. If it's really high probability, maybe you undergo some review, but it's very likely going to be correct. Whereas if anything that's in that gray area, you especially want a human in the loop, it's going to be used for really important decision making down the road. So yeah, lots of checks and balances, and depending on how high consequence those predictions are, you need to be more and more careful about the output before you can truly trust the model.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks, Ewan. I think keeping copyrights aside, because I think we've discussed copyrights extensively, what are some other common pitfalls marketers should avoid when applying AI and machine learning in their strategies?
Yes, I think there are kind of like two parts there. One is like technical pitfalls, and versus like behavioral pitfalls. I'll talk about behavioral part first, because we already talked about marketing fatigueness. So marketing fatigueness is one, we've already talked about it, and then being or keeping creativity is another one, especially in the world of Gen AI. There is a chance that certain patterns reoccur within the Gen AI contents. So, which if you blindly use the Gen AI created contents in your marketing campaigns, then there is a chance that your contents may be repeated, not as a whole, but partials of your contents can be repeated. And the key there to avoid any pitfalls is like, how can you keep your creativity while getting assisted by these Gen AI? So it applies to non-Gen AI ML models as well. Like ML models do their predictions by chains of generalizations. And by generalizing some concepts within data sets, they tend to kind of like converge to the mean. So you need to avoid ML models in general predicting the average all the time. Rather, have some percentage of your output, keep it at least random or keep it to your creativity, and let experiments flow so that you don't pigeonhole yourself based on the outputs of these ML models. So those are some of the key behavioral pitfalls that I would advise marketers or data scientists for marketing to keep in mind while building the models.
Nick, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, I guess I can maybe build with a couple more comments on each of the two kind of general areas that you mentioned, Yoon. So there's a kind of more technical side of things, and then there's more, let's say, the big picture. I'd say on the technical side, one other point I'd bring up is if you're actually training the model yourself, which just really isn't going away with these, big LLMs that are being released by major companies. We're still going to need to train models, and especially for smaller, more specific tasks. It's something that's really feasible for even a smaller company to do in-house. and use their own proprietary data and do well. Really, data quality is key. So if you have a biased data set that's going into your model, then the predictions it's going to make are going to be biased as well. So it's really important, for example, with demographics, if you want to target the entire age spectrum, but you have a bunch of data collected from TikTok to use your to make your decisions, then it's going to do a poor job at targeting the older generations. So I think data quality, understanding that, and in the book we do. So we have different data sets that folks can download and follow along for free on our GitHub page. And then one of the first steps we go through in each case is the data cleaning and understanding the data to see if any of those biases are built in. So I'd say data quality is a really important one. And I guess from the bigger picture, I'd just say making sure that your objective for your ML model is just really clear. Like in the case of LLMs, prompt engineering is the way that you can go about that. So making sure that you're clearly telling the LLM model what it's supposed to generate. And again, in the case of marketing campaigns, and you have a whole chapter on this in the book as well, you want to know what KPIs you're tracking, so key performance metrics or indicators, and you need to know how to calculate them and being really familiar with all of that, and then tying that back to what you're actually producing with, in the case of an LLM, the Gen AI model is really important. Otherwise, you can lose the forest for the trees.
I have an interesting question on YouTube. Onair I think that's Onair. How much time I have to become the best like you?
Nick, I'll let you answer first.
I mean, it's the stuff that we're talking about is accessible to anyone. It's all about your curiosity and really how deep you want to go into it. I mean, if you're interested in being the person who's coding and architecting and developing these ML models, I mean, go through exercises and tutorials. Of course, we have many targeted towards marketing in the book, but if you're willing to do some sifting, the internet can be a great general resource for all different types of content on AI. But the key thing there is to find code, even just start by running it yourself, tweaking it a bit until you get to the point where you can actually, write your own code. It can be an incremental process, but you'll get there. Or if you're not interested in actually writing the code, that's fine too. There are some low or no code platforms out there. There's, I think, Google AutoML is a good one. H2O.ai is another one, or obviously like ChatGPT. You can just type it in and apply some of these fundamentals yourself. So it's becoming more mainstream, no matter what level of interest you have. But really, getting your hands dirty is the important first step. Anything to add, Yoon?
You both written a book on marketing. This is the time to plug in. This is the right time.
I was about to say. So my short answer: as long as it takes you to read through the book we've written.
There you go, Yoon. There you go.
But yeah, jokes aside, definitely we poured a lot of our experience, like first-hand experiences, us building data science models. Jokes aside, our book does contain a lot of our trials and errors, so it can really fast track you, gaming up your data science skills. But really, there's no set time. You can be an expert within months. You can be expert in years. Really, like Nick said, it's all about intellectual curiosity. So if you're curious, if you're into this field, you'll become an expert in no time.
Yeah. There's another query on YouTube that how can these models be used in a React and Spring Boot full stack application? Can it be, firstly?
Yes, there is a way. The way I would recommend, though, is, I may be biased. To give you a little background, like I was trained to be a full stack developer as well. I was a full stack developer before I became a data scientist. So I know where you're coming from. I've used both React and Spring. There are ways you can build and incorporate these ML models using these frameworks. But the way I would recommend is spinning up some microservices that kind of embrace these ML models. So typically, Python or R or some other statistical or interpreted languages are commonly used because of the amount of packages available. So I would recommend utilizing what's out there already, kind of embrace it as a microservice. You can expose it as a REST service, and then let your other parts of your platform speak to these model services through APIs. I think that's honestly the easiest and fastest way to scale up, and incorporating these models into your systems. Nick, if you want to add
I guess,
anything.
yeah, just very briefly. I mean, likewise, there's lots of different ways you can go about it, but at the end of the day, you need some backends. You can use Spring Boot, need some API layer. So you mentioned microservices that'll talk to, and then React for your front end. But I don't know. I don't want to be too prescriptive in how you actually go about it. But if you know that those are your basic tools, and I'm sure there's some great packed books that we can recommend as well as far as the API development and integration goes. It can definitely be done. The tools are out there, and Python is a great starting point, in my opinion.
So in case people have more queries, I think this should be the last call for all queries. I have one more query for the both of you before we move on to the last raffle. And in case there are any more queries in the chat, we'll take that up. So, what advice would you give to marketing professionals with limited programming experience who want to start incorporating AI and machine learning into their campaigns?
Great question. Like Nick alluded to this in earlier answer, but there are a lot of tools available nowadays. There are a lot of no-code platforms that you can use and build ML models and incorporate and run it on a regular basis or even in real time. So that's definitely one way, going like no-code route or little code route. Another way, if you want to get your hands dirty or start learning how to code, even though you're a marketer or marketing professional, I would suggest start small. You'll be amazed by how many things you can do without even getting into ML or AI. We actually touched a little bit about it in our book in the very first 2 chapters. We kind of like start off this book as if like I'm a marketer, like where should I start? So definitely start small, start looking into your KPIs, start kind of strategizing how you would go about tracking KPIs better in real time and use it as your decision making. Because the best starting point is starting with data-driven decision makings, and that's going to tell you where their strengths are or where the weaknesses are, and then you can start to optimize. Then how can I dig into what factors actually drive successful marketing campaigns, which we also happen to talk about in our book. So you can go to the next level of, okay, then tell me why, doing a little bit of causal inference, which uses some codes and some Python libraries. And then with some causal analysis, then you can even go further building these predictive models and so forth. You can even get to building your own Gen AI models. But the gist of my point here is start small. Don't think too big. Start small. Start kind of analyzing what's on your hand, and then keep asking questions. Your curiosity will take it to a point where you will eventually learn how to code, how to build these models using Python or any library of your choice, and eventually deploy your models into productions.
Yeah, and just to briefly add, I mean, without repeating myself from what I mentioned before, like you mentioned, start small, find something that interests you, and it can be anything. Don't let the best idea in the world to get started with ML or Gen AI be the blocker. Find anything, no matter how small, get started on it. If you really don't have any inspiration, again, you can just follow some of these marketing campaign examples that we have in the book and tweak that code. But just get your hands dirty, get going, and the excitement will build as you build your mastery as well. So whatever you need to do to get your hands dirty and get into it is the most important thing.
Brilliant. Thank you, gentlemen, for the time. Let us do a last raffle. And in the meantime, you can think about closing thoughts if you want to share anything. Uh, I'll just share my screen and we can do a last raffle. Just let me know whenever you can see my screen. So, oh yeah, the first winner was Savitri Banka. Can you all see my
Yep,
screen?
we see your screen. Yep.
Right. So that was the winner for the first raffle, and we're going to hit draw again. There you go. Right. Congratulations,
Jeremy.
Jeremy. Jeremy Handy on LinkedIn. Congratulations, Jeremy. Uh, please connect with me, reach out to me. You're on LinkedIn, so I think I'll add you up. But yeah, please accept my request when I add you up. And then, yeah, I'll ensure that you get your ebook. So, congratulations, Jeremy and Savitri, for your book. Uh, thank you, gentlemen, for your time for this session. Do you want to share any closing thoughts? Shots? Thoughts.
Sure
Sorry.
thing. Definitely pleasure talking to all of us here. Great questions. I love all these uh, fresh thoughts and talking about this topic. Definitely check out our book. We've spent a lot of hours, thoughts. So definitely give a check it out. Um, and yeah, if you happen to be a data scientist or marketing professional, uh, nice. Definitely kind of like keep it going. I don't think you should feel blocked, even if there are some hard problems to solve. I think your curiosity is your biggest ally and will keep you move forward. So I would say just keep it going, have fun, enjoy the ride, and yeah, definitely keep us in the loop. If we happen to help you at all, or if you happen to not like anything about us or our book, definitely I welcome all the comments and feedback. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. And similarly, yeah, thanks everyone for attending. It's funny, Jeremy, who was the last winner of the raffle, is a good friend of mine from high
Oh,
school. So always looking to make new connections. It was great to see Jeremy, you attending, and everybody else. And like you mentioned, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We love to make new connections. If you have feedbacks or thoughts around the book, we'd love to hear it. And let your curiosity just take control, and you'll go far in the field if you're interested. So thanks, everyone.
thanks, Nick. Thanks, Ewan. Jeremy was picked at random. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I did not even know that he was your friend or school friend. But yeah, congrats to all the winners and thank you everyone for attending. I have another live session next week. So until next week, ta and do this to all. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.